Привет, ребята! Сегодня я вам покажу настоящую Audi, оригинальную Quattro 10 клапанов. Эта тачка была создана уже теперь 40 лет тому назад, в 1980 году. Была показана впервые на выставке в Женеве. Мир не мог поверить, но эта тачка реально произвела революцию в автомобильном мире. Реально раллийный полноприводный автомобиль. Если вы заметили, то у меня в гараже много таких старых унитазов. Это потому, что я знаю толк в настоящих автомобилях. А вы, молодые засранцы, ездите на своих Hyundai'х и Kia, ешьте в KFC, набирайте кредиты и женитесь на алчных бездушных бабах, таких же, как ваши Kia и Hyundai. Поэтому сейчас останьтесь у экранов те, которым нужен рок и адреналин. Эта тачка именно для вас. Я даже специально храню все глянцевые журналы тех лет. Вот такой вот я английский педант. А вы? Однодневное потребительское мудачье, живущее одним сегодняшним днем. Даже сам Фердинанд Порше участвовал в разработке этой Audi. Ну как участвовал? Наблюдал, дай только. Тогда и не было еще конкурентов. Вот такая жалкая BMW и все. Тут пятицилиндровый двигатель с турбиной и полным приводом. И кстати, для тех, кто хочет себе 4WD, берите или Audi, или Subaru. Они над этим работают уже с 1970-х годов.
That performed particularly well in snow, and rather than trying to make an off-road road car, let's make a rally performance car that had four-wheel traction. That would be a proper weapon for rallying and also performance cars with these turbos, this big dump of torque. So there you go, that's the background.
Вы думаете, у меня закончились старые журналы? Ха, да я с этого только начинал.
There they are. They were just, a little column here, and there's Mercedes G-Wagon, the Jeep Regane, Daihatsu. They weren't performance cars, but, God, they loved the Audi. And if I turn to the listing for the Audi Quattro, sum up, through its sheer ability and loveliness.
Вот видно, что эта Audi стоила в 2 раза выше, чем обычная такая же. И я очень горд тем, что у меня есть такие журналы 1982 года. И такие Audi в распоряжении. В отличие от вас, у которых, кроме кредитов, нихуя нет. Ладно. Хватит пиздеть, пойдем смотреть тачку. Она поступила в продажу в 1981 году. Так как у нее впереди 4 фары, она считается одной из первых версий. А значит и самая дорогая. Поняли? Позднее стали делать с одной фарой впереди. Короче, это пиздец как круто. То, что я вам показываю.
We then saw it obviously on E30, M3 and other cars like that. Integrale was another one. It's just such a neat way of extending the wings out rather than having sort of an eyebrow wing extension. And it was just bizarre that this was a four-wheel drive performance car before we'd even thought about it. We had to wait, was it to 1994?
Позднее уже, конечно, появились и Porsche 911 Лянчи Интеграле. Но в 1981 году их просто не было. Поэтому равных этой тачке на то время еще придумают не скоро. Но есть и нюанс. За эту стоимость можно было купить Range Rover. Да, такие вот дела. Инновации бей их мать. Во все времена стоили дорого. 6-я серия BMW тоже была конкурентом. А это уже не шутка. Поэтому их не так много и было продано. Но и надо понимать, что в те годы деньги еще зарабатывали, а не наворовывали. Поэтому купить сразу 3 машины и не париться мог позволить далеко не каждый. Вот и приходилось делать свой выбор не в пользу этой Audi. Хотя тачка классная. Но пройдемся быстренько под капотом. Пятицилиндровый двигатель. Разрабатывался как для переднеприводной модели изначально. Поэтому были проблемы, как его вкорячить для 4 ВД. Короче, сами видите. Навенили сюда всякой навесной лапши. Я сейчас показываю очевидные вещи, но для 81 года это было инновационно. Все это, что вы видите, и породило в будущем поколение Audi RS Quattro. This is like looking at the Porsche 911 engine this end, then a gearbox, and then a shaft going up to the 4-wheel drive. Very clever, very Audi, very Ferdinand Piech. And obviously, from then on, this was how Audi produced its performance road cars. 4-wheel drive, engine overhanging, it goes right the way forward to RS4, RS6, to the present day. That's what Quattro, that was the magic that Quattro introduced to the motoring world. Зато зацените, какие сиденья и качественные материалы. Сейчас вы такого не получите даже в самых премиальных автомобилях. 15-дюймовые колеса, да больше и не надо на самом деле. Зато какой удобный багажник. Настоящий резиновый спойлер. Не какая-то пластмассовая шляпа.
And there you are, a usable boot. You've got the fuel tank is here, you've got a spare wheel, electric stuff. So a really nice car. Oh, a rear wiper and washer fluid there. So there we go. That was the Quattro. Now let's take it outside.
Поехали уже, мне самому не терпится.
Well, just like the Sport Quattro, if you're used to Golf GTI of the period, this is the same look. The velour, I love the velour because it's such a soft feel when you set off. It's just a really nice seat covering. Cranks into life. Simple gauge layout, just a boost, fuel tank and speedo and rev counter, all you need. Standard heater slider controls.
Что поражает, когда едешь на машине 81 года, это количество блеска вокруг. Пятицилиндровый мотор издает характерный свой звук. Не очень громкий, но в то же время уверенный рокот. Пластик тут довольно громкий, что не характерно для того времени.
So distinctive. I mean, it's not really loud like the works cars in sort of going around Kielder Forest or anything, but it's definitely there, the 5-cylinder thrum of that straight 5 engine. Then other things you notice where it's 1 or 2 rattles. This is quite hard plastic. This is what you use today.
Пластик такой же жесткий, из которого делали аудиокассеты.
They used to make cassette cases out of up here as well. But the seats are sort of comfy.
Сиденья отменные, теплые и удобные. Руль с гидроусилителем. Управление климатом – это пиздец. Смотрите сами. Но зато крупненько лампово отражен диффлок. Шумоизоляция? Ну вы сами слышите. такое. Не Range Rover, конечно. Вы знаете, и не секрет, что я занимаюсь сельским хозяйством. И вот как-то на одной выставке сортов зерна шел дождь. И туда можно было приехать разве что на Range Rover. И даже они там буксовали. Но вдруг внезапно появилась такая вот красная Audi. Чистая и незарюханная. Она прошла по той грязи, как по асфальту. Меня тогда это глубоко впечатлило. Да что там меня? Мы все там просто охуели. Скоро, кстати, зима. Подумайте об этом. Свободно крутит за 5500 оборотов. Очень удобно и коротко. 6 секунд до 100. Да куда вам больше? На этом корыте. Я уже сказал, для чего и в чем ее главная фишка. А сейчас я просто тут кругами поношусь и что-то по-английски поговорю. Если хотите, насладитесь просто видами, а я так в целом уже все по существу рассказал.
The ease. I was talking to an owner who had one of these in period, and he basically said, you know, when I drove the Quattro, I was probably quicker in the wet than I was in the dry. It was truly astonishing, its wet weather performance, and so awe-inspiring, because you were always wary of the rear-wheel drive BMWs. They did have a habit of stepping out, and you weren't used to it. It was, you know, just one of the things they did, sir. Jaguar the same, but the Quattro, you could put the power down, and it was a torque-rich performance as well because of that turbo. So it really felt quite quick. Turbocharging again in 1981. There was a handful of companies doing it. BMW obviously did the 2002, but that was actually mid-70s, and it was out of production, I think, in 75 or 76. Obviously the 911 Turbo was there. Renault had that Renault 5 Turbo mid-engine crazy machine. Saab with the 99, and then Lotus in 1980 came with the Esprit Turbo. And that was probably the pick of the bunch, if you look back, for turbo response, because they still were running carburetors in that short run. So to have turbo written on your car was a sign that, wow, you're in something really new, high tech. And then to have the four-wheel drive and be able to exploit that performance, well, that was what Quattro really offered. Again, I'm going down this road. This is a bumpy road. Those taller tyres, regular sort of car. This is such a nice car to cover distances, and that's what made them so popular. The pick, if you're going to drive something on road and you wanted a little bit of traction, and you had a choice of Range Rover or Quattro, well, Quattro sort of won, and it was tempting people out of cars like 911. It had the usability and this sort of cross-country capability, and it was just a really nice car to be. Early cars like this were left-hand drive only. In the UK market, we had to put up with it, and then the dash went digital as well, which was a strange thing to do. Rather than the analog, we got these sort of high-tech digital dash, and the final iteration was, well, they introduced a 20 valve back 1987, and it had torque differential in the centre. You missed out the manual control of the locking dick. What I haven't mentioned is the weight of this car, because I put it on the scales as I normally do. And you think it's a 4-seater car, 5-cylinder engine, 4-wheel drive, and it was 1285 kilos on my scales with a full tank of fuel. Remarkable how they could package, before all the major safety tech came in, how light they could make a car like this. But that's what it feels like from behind the wheel. You do feel the lack of mass, and that 200 horsepower over delivers on performance because of it. Because you know, 200 horsepower doesn't get you anywhere these days, does it really? But when you've only got 1280 kilos plus a fat balding bloke in his 60s sitting in it, well, it's fine, the performance. Again, it's got all that suspension travel of cars in this period, not quite as much as the Sport Quattro, strangely. Spring brakes feel about the same. Brakes are a little mushy. Well, they're very mushy, actually. So, well, summarising this car. Well, one, it's hard to believe it's 40 years on. I could quite happily live with this car on a sort of doing regular journeys. It was that far ahead of its time, I think, when it came out. It introduced a completely different usability to performance cars in all conditions. 12 months of the year, didn't matter what the weather was doing, you take the Quattro. I mean, I can't get over the simplicity of it now, looking back, and the quality of the plastics, etc. But as a drive machine, it's terrific, and the steering's lovely as well. The simplicity of a regular hydraulic rack, narrowish tyres, just very easy. A little bit of understeer as we go around there. But I've got that mid-range boost that's pumping hard at 2,500 RPM. Really nice through there. 220 pound-foot of torque, is it? 250 newton meters. Yeah, it's not a huge amount of grip, but easy to play. I don't know. It's lovely revisiting these cars. And as I was explaining the 20 valve, what the 20 valve felt to me, it just feels a little bit more hunkered down than this. But the character of the engine had slightly gone. They fitted a smaller turbo. Catalysts had come in by 1990. And although it's quicker response, it didn't have the character of the early 10 valve. If I was going to choose between having a Quattro, if I could have a Quattro tuck away, I'd be very tempted by the 10 valve one rather than a 20 valve, even though the 20 valve is basically, on paper, a better car. I think the character of the original Quattro is what I would enjoy if I wanted to revisit. It's just, yeah, it stands for so much in Audi's history, and it stood the test of time, and it set Audi as a differentiator but amongst all other brands. So a critical car in its thing. You can understand why the true enthusiasts recognise this car, and they sold 11,500 of them in all, rather than the 400 the marketing department said they were going to sell. Was it 300? So yeah, I hope that's given you a little insight into the Quattro, what made it such a defining car for Audi and also for performance cars around the world. If you have enjoyed this video, well, keep watching, keep subscribing, because there'll be more videos coming along very soon.